So I went and cleared out everything that was obviously outdated. We had, of course, like bullet points on speculation about what TV kit might be, and rumors of the new Apple TV remote.
We should talk about that. We get those predictions right.
In the realm of follow-up, we have more follow-up about the TiVo that neither Marco nor I cares about.
Oh, you care. You need to care. Actually, there's one item about the TiVo that's not in the follow-up that I want to briefly mention. So since last week, I think more people have either followed our links to the TiVo bolts or seen people tweeting about it, or, it's made the rounds in the tech news sites and stuff. And people have looked at it and listened to my comments about how I can't believe that they made a thing that you can't stack something on top of. And a lot of people have responded with other TV-connected devices that are unstackable in various ways. One of the ones that came up a lot was the Boxy Box. Do you guys remember that?
I do.
It basically looked like a cube tilted on its corner and then set down into the table, so that it's sort of a cube on an angle. But it wasn't actually a cube. They chopped off part of it. Anyway, it's clearly nothing can go on top of it, because if it was a cube just resting normally on the table, it'd work fine, but it's tilted and then the corners are chopped off, and that's ridiculous. The reason I think the TiVo Bolt is worse than the Boxy Box and those other things is that the TiVo Bolt, like I said on the show, it's like thumbing its nose at you. It's so close to being just a flat box, but they said, you know what? Screw you. We're bending it. It's not a, because the Boxy Box, I give it a pass. Like, oh, they're making a little piece of art. It's like a sculpture. It's not even close to, it is clearly never going to be something you can stack. Also, it's not widering. The Boxy Box is a plain old normal proportion box that you put under a TV, in terms of it's around the size of a regular TiVo. It's around the size of a Blu-ray player or a game console or anything like that. It's exactly flat on all sides, and then they just bent it. And that, I feel, is just the worst. And then one other item is not here. People have already started opening the thing up and figuring out if they can upgrade the little 2.5-inch drive to whatever the max capacity 2.5-inch drives they have, and apparently that's successful. So if people are buying this, even though, again, this is not the high-end TiVo, and the TiVo folks themselves have had a series of Q&As and stuff where they've re-emphasized, not that, this wasn't a question, like we said in the last show, this is not the Pro product. They still sell a Pro product that has more features and more storage and more tuners and everything. And they said, don't worry, eventually we will come out with the Pro model. Whether the Pro model will also be bent, will it even be called the Bolt? We don't know. They just basically said, this product is not for you, people who want the highest end TiVo. And they were pretty candid. I wish I could find this Q&A. Did we link it last week? Maybe we didn't. Anyway, the guy who was talking was from TiVo, was basically saying, look, he's talking to a bunch of very enthusiastic TiVo fans. Look, and he's saying, I know you guys don't want this because it doesn't have lots of storage and it's not big and fancy and it has fewer tuners and it's basically a downgrade from the one you have now. This is not for you, but basically if we just continue to make products for you, we would go out of business. We need to make a low-end product that is distinctive and appealing. He was also basically defending the crazy shape, saying that's what we have to do to stay in business. We have to find a way to sell something to people who otherwise wouldn't buy a TiVo. There are not enough people like me who want the high-end TiVo to keep us in business. I think he said something like they got 150,000 new customers last year, as in people who hadn't previously owned TiVos, new to TiVo customers, and that's just not enough. So what they're trying to do is make a cheap product that will stand out, that people will notice it. They're like, oh, it's that crazy bent thing that's white. I don't know if that's noticing in a good way or a bad way, but hey, it's noticing. And have it be an actual good product, have features, have interesting features, be faster, be more responsive, all that good stuff, have the automatic commercial skipping and everything. So this is one of their many ploys to stay in business. It's sad that the high-end customers can't sustain them as a company. I'm not quite sure what their expenses are, or, it's not like they're Netflix where they're licensing content for something. They're just making, basically a little computer that you attach to your TV. Anyway.
Yeah, making hardware is easy.
Well, it's not the same as what is your burn rate? How many employees do you need? And especially if you've been doing it for many, many years, I guess just 150,000 is just not enough sales and you just need to sell more of them. So I want TiVo to stay in business. So I guess everyone should wait for them to come out with the high-end TiVo and then buy the most expensive one and then throw it in the garbage. Whatever. I want them to stay in business. So anyway, the actual follow-up that was in here is the question from last week. What kind of TiVo Bolt features could possibly come through a software update to existing TiVo owners, to the Romeo models, which is the old high-end one? And someone from TiVo, this is at TiVo Design on Twitter, said quick mode, which is a thing that's like smart speed where you watch 30% faster, and channel logos in the guide are two items that are coming through a software update. Not mentioned is the thing that skips commercials, which is totally technically possible to bring to the other ones. Quick mode was the one I had a question about, and apparently that's coming. They didn't mention the commercial skipping, and that could just be like, oh, we're going to save that for the other models to make you upgrade, which, whatever, I'm fine. I'll if they come out with the new high-end TiVo, I will probably buy it. History has shown that I will probably buy it. So I think that's it for the Bolt.
We should note that Jeremy Clarkson has tweeted today, which in and of itself is unremarkable, but he has tweeted, with a skeleton crew filming for Amazon Prime's new motoring program, spelled incorrectly, has begun. And it has a shot of, what are these cars? This is a LaFerrari, a McLaren...
P1.
Thank you, the P1 and whatever the Ferrari du jour of the hour is.
No, it's a Porsche. It's the 918.
Oh, that's the 918? Oh, it looks like a...
Come on. You've been away from these shows. You can't even identify... This is, as I tweeted, this is the... When are they going to get to the fireworks factory? Because in the sad last season of Top Gear, they were like, oh, finally, when the LaFerrari comes out, we're going to test it. We're going to test all these hybrid supercars or whatever. Are they all hybrid? I forget if the P1 is hybrid. Maybe not. Anyway, we're going to test all these top-end supercars against each other because they tested the 918 on its own. They tested the P1 on its own. And the LaFerrari came out and they tested it on its own. And like, now we're going to have these guys do a shootout. And like the very last episode where they were all together, like, oh, the manufacturers wouldn't let us race them against each other. So sorry, guys. We're working on it. But right now, they're all big babies because they're all afraid their car's going to lose. So they don't want them to race each other. We're trying to work something out. And eventually it's like, hey, we've worked something out. They've all agreed to race under whatever conditions. And then Clarkson went and punched somebody and the show was over.
That's absolutely
pretty good
right.
summary.
So I was like, when are they going to get to the fireworks factory? They kept teasing, I want to see that showdown between those three cars. That's exactly what I want to see. So I am super excited that this Amazon show, the first picture they show is, guess what? We got those three cars. Presumably we're going to race them against each other.
The other follow-up we had is this big kerfuffle that's been going around, particularly as we record on Wednesday, with regard to battery life for the two different A9s. Apparently both Samsung and TSMC, what does that stand for? Taiwan
Semiconductor Manufacturer Company,
something like that. Apparently both of them are fabbing the A9, and apparently one of these things is not like the other, you could say. So Marco, you were talking about this earlier today. Would you like to fill us in on some of the details?
Well, unfortunately, we don't know a lot yet. It might not be a story, but it might be a story. And it's at the time we record this on Wednesday night, it's way too early to say whether there's anything here or whether this is just a couple of people getting weird test results. The gist of it is, so we know for sure that the A9 chip in the iPhone 6, as you mentioned, is being fabbed by two companies, TSMC and Samsung, and they have two different manufacturing processes at those two companies. The Samsung one is actually the smaller feature size. That Samsung is 14 nanometer, TSMC is 16. So you would expect the smaller feature size one, being Samsung, to have better battery life because it uses less power.
Well, not in the days of leakage current dominating, because now it's not like that used to be true. But then once the leakage current became a thing, it kind of kept along, because what people would do is like, oh, I can't even make like a 22 nanometer chip until I solve this leakage current problem. So they would solve it by using like high K dielectric or whatever, things that they're doing. And then it would shrink and you would get lower power. And it's like, yay, everything's following along. But really the only reason you got less power is because they figured out the leakage thing. And so as we get smaller and smaller, it's like, oh, we got that problem again. We got all this leakage. What are we going to do? So you're right that in the old thinking, in like the, 45 nanometer, 65 nanometer thinking, shrinking is better. But now the sizes we're at now, shrinking is not necessarily better unless you know the intimate details of the geometry and materials of their actual transistors.
Right. So anyway, the gist is there's a couple of people, and again, the test size here is really small, but there's a couple of people who are getting results that indicate that the TSMC manufactured one, which is actually the larger feature size, but as John just explained, that doesn't really matter as much anymore. Basically the TSMC manufactured A9s are yielding substantially better battery life than the Samsung ones. The test so far suggests that it might be as much as like 20-25% more battery life.
Well, do you know, let's put a qualifier on that, because here's my first question about these things. Are they yielding better battery life, or are they yielding better Geekbench battery scores? Because I'm not entirely convinced that there isn't something about the Geekbench battery test that behaves differently on one thing than the other. Like if this is our only metric, like you said, it's a small number of people, it's like, a few dozen people, and if they're all running the Geekbench battery test, qualifier on that, because here's my first question about these things. Are they yielding better battery life, or are they yielding better Geekbench battery scores? Because I'm not entirely convinced that there isn't something about the Geekbench battery test that behaves differently on one thing than the other. Like if this is our only metric, like you said, it's a small number of people, it's like, a few dozen people, and if they're all running the Geekbench battery test,